Over the years, we've done 500 or 600 videos on Chinese and Asian art, the auction market, authentication, pointing out auctions that have lots of fakes and copies of them, which, as many of you know, is a prevalent problem that continues to this day. But the biggest contributor to problems with much of this and misidentification is the internet itself. And while the internet is a very useful tool for looking things up, as you know, on the homepage over at Bitamount, we have a whole section with links to museums and institutions and major auction houses where you can go and look things up and all that. And those are sort of safe areas to go and look things up. But when it comes to the internet in general, it's a swamp and it's a mess. And there's a ton of misinformation out there, some of it unintentionally, some of it intentionally, some of it because people just think they know what they don't know, and so forth. And I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to talk about AI and what's happening there, and some really bad information that's being generated by AI, which it shouldn't be doing, but it is. And I'm going to get into that. So stick around for the AI aspect of this, because it's quite astounding, to put it mildly, about how it looks at Chinese antiques, and even when asked very specific questions for image creation and that kind of software is just off by a country mile. But one of the channels I'm going to talk about initially, it came to me because I've gotten many emails over the years from people about this fellow is channel Chinese masterpieces. Some of you have seen them and things, and he seems to have just an endless supply of imperial porcelains and rare Sung pieces and Ruware and Yuan pieces and all this stuff. But he's most famous. I think he's most remembered for this video. And this was the famous video where he brought a bunch of reproductions of Ruware and modern jades that have been acid bathed to Bonhams to consign them. And obviously, if they were authentic and somebody came in with just a piece of Ruware, they would take it in a heartbeat. Those of you that aren't familiar with Ruware, it's a type of ceramic that was made during the Sung Dynasty. It's extremely limited. The current list of known examples in the entire world are under 100. And in this picture, he seems to have brought in 3 or 4 pieces that would be worth 30, 40, 50, $60 million if they were authentic. And he got in that legendary argument with the poor Bonhams guy. The Bonhams guy finally gave up and just walked out of the room. But this fellow is a true believer. And a few years ago, he came over to the forum page on Bitamount and put up some things, started a discussion, and people pushed back on him, saying, no, these are knockoffs and copies. And everything on his website are copies and knockoffs, as far as anybody could tell. I haven't heard of anybody yet finding an authentic piece on here. And he's got hundreds of them, apparently, and all of them are brand new. And finally, I chimed in on the forum, which I don't often do. I like people to go there and just speak or say what they say. I believe in free speech. I don't think this guy's website should be taken down, for example, even though it's, in my opinion, very, very misleading. I don't think his YouTube channel should be taken down because it's very misleading. But people should be aware of it. And they should know how misleading things can be if you don't already. Because some people, when they get interested in art collecting in every category, go to the internet naturally to look things up, to do research. And the problem is that you come across sites like this, which have, in everybody's opinion, I think pretty much the consensus is that these are all fakes, copies, reproductions made since probably 1990 onward. All right. And but I chimed in and told him that what was wrong with his argument about the authenticity of his pieces. And he's got a whole argument about incrustations on Sung pieces and bronzes that can only happen from being buried in the ground for a long time. Well, I happen to know a Yale chemist who told me any surface that you can find on a piece of metal or on a piece of porcelain caused by age can be manufactured in a laboratory with chemicals in a matter of hours. He's a doctorate in chemistry, so I take his word for it. Anyway, this is his site, and down here he got so upset about it he posted this, and it's slander. It's point blank slander because he didn't express it as an opinion. He's just basically calling me a liar and crony dealer and all that, and that is libel. But at any rate, or slander. I always get libel and slander mixed up. My lawyer told me when I showed a lawyer this, and he said he didn't say opinion. The guy's out of his mind. He said, do you want to, you can take action against him. I'm not gonna because he isn't worth it. But this is it. But in here, he has this theory that there is a giant. And this is untrue. This is one of these internet myths, and he's not the only person that says it. That there's a cabal by the major auction houses and museums to control the art market, so there isn't a flood of it, and the values remain high. And the only people that can sell at the major auction houses are, important collectors and from important collections and all this, which is absolute poppycock nonsense. And he names Sotheby's, Christie's, and Bonhams are the main controllers of the art markets and narratives throughout the world, which is absolutely untrue. They have an influence in it because they have smart people that work there. Many of them are academic and scholars, former people from Harvard like Mr. Mowry and things like that. There are lots of academics. Billy Sargent at Bonhams, who used to be the curator at the Peabody Essex Museum for many, many years. And there are lots of them out there, and they go to work for auction houses when they retire from the museum life because they love what they're doing. And over the years, they've gotten to know a lot of these guys because museums do buy at auction, and they collect from donations from people who sell at auction. It is a community, but it's not a closed community by any stretch of the imagination at all. We've all seen the cases and read about them in the news about somebody that bought the famous yard sale bowl from the Sung Dynasty out in Long Island for $2 or $3 or $4 a number of years ago. Not that long ago, actually, maybe in the last 10 years. And he took it to an appraisal day that Sotheby's was somehow involved with. I think it was Sotheby's, and they sold it for around $2 million. There's the famous story of the lady in France who found a Chinese vase in her closet, and Sotheby's did a wonderful video about it. We did a video on it, and she put it in a shoebox, hopped on the subway, and took it over to Sotheby's when they were doing appraisal days and brought it in and said, I know it's Chinese, but I don't know anything about it. Is it any good? Did they reject it? No, they didn't reject it. They jumped on it and said, this is fantastic. It's fabulous. There's a similar one in the Guimet. Probably, came down to her family. And the end of the story was she ended up getting $17 million at the auction for it. So the idea that these things are being rejected from the market, the legitimate pieces are being rejected from the market, are just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. And at any rate, I pushed back on him with his ideas, and Mr. Masterpieces here. He says that I'm the cheerleader for the cabal, and Peter Combs is a major auction house cheerleader and mouthpiece. He's a former auctioneer and apparently spends his time telling unsuspecting collectors they can tell at a glance of a photo if a piece is real from fake. Any rate, many of you know that you could, of course, do that, and I've done it for many of you, and you've done well with them, and so on. So it's just a silly story, but my point is that this is one of the problems with the internet. But I'm going to get into a couple of other cases where I think it's innocent, and some of it was done for showbiz and so forth. But once the information gets out there, it's out there forever, and it's wrong. And I'm going to show you a couple of videos from a program called Pawn Stars, and many of you are familiar with it. And they have a character that comes in and does their Asian works of art and antiquities. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But the problem is that those videos, Mr. Sharon, the Masterpiece guy here, his videos have only been seen, 10, 20, 30,000 times maybe. Pawn Stars videos get 1 million views. And the information on these videos that they presented was completely and totally inaccurate, wrong. And but people now have that in their heads. If they Google and they go on YouTube looking for information, they could watch these videos and think, this is it. This is what we're on to. And I'm going to show you those. We're going to talk about them. And then we're going to talk about the problem with AI, which I think you'll find pretty interesting. So hold on.
Hey, what do we got here?
A Qianlong bowl.
Qianlong bowl.
Uh-huh.
Okay, explain what a Qianlong bowl is to me.
Qianlong was the period around 1700 when this bowl was done.
Well, there's a Chinese stamp on the bottom of it.
Right.
Now, many of you know, just by glancing there, that quick shot, that's not a Qianlong bowl. That is a copy of a Tongchi bowl. And these were made mostly after the 1980s, as many of you know. The form originally, the shape, that style of bowl was originally done during the Tongxi period, actually. That was when they were most commonly produced, and then thereafter. But he believes it's a Qianlong bowl. And we're going to find out that it's not, but the expert they bring in really muddies the water. And this is the problem with some of the on-air experts. And we're going to get into that just shortly. Now, as if you're familiar with Pawn Stars, after somebody brings in something that's unusual that might be very valuable, they often call a buddy to bring in who's an expert. And many of them are not really people these fellows even know. It's done by the network. They line up colorful characters to come on, and in this case, they bring in one of the biggest characters they have ever had on the show, and he's on several times. He's on fairly often, and he is a former child actor. He got a doctorate in archaeology. He'll explain that at some point in here. I think he mentions it. He claims to have a doctorate in archaeology from Sheffield College, Sheffield University in England, which is, as far as I know, it's now defunct, and it's an unaccredited, unrecognized place. Many consider it to have been a diploma mill. You pay a small fee, and they'll award you a degree in whatever you want, basically. And this is the guy. He dresses in steampunk outfits. He was also an interior decorator at one point. He's just a colorful character. He's a funny guy, but what he says is inaccurate. He's being presented here as an expert, which is very discouraging.
Had in my shop, but I got to make sure it's real before I lay out a dime. If you don't mind, I'd like to have a friend come down. He's an expert in Asian antiquities. He will know everything there is to know about it.
Good.
And one other thing, he dresses a little weird, so don't be shocked, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to give him a call. I'll be right back, all right?
All right, very good.
Wow, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous piece of Chinese ceramic. It's still absolutely in impeccable condition. I mean, I'm going to say museum quality for what I've seen.
So we know right away, those of you who've been collecting any length of time know right away, he doesn't know what he's talking about at all. And you're going to, how little he knows and how much this spreads can spread through the internet with this kind of information is damaging to people. And he actually Pawn Star ends up being talked into paying thousands of dollars for this because of this man's expertise. And it's just really, really sad all the way around. And this video has been on the air. It's been on the internet now, not to mention all the people that saw it when it initially aired on the television program, but it's been online 1 year, and it's had nearly 1 million views. All right. So here we go.
I am Dr. Phineas Castle, and I'm an expert in Asian art and antiques and architecture. I lived in Asia for 7 years, studying the art, the architecture, and the artifacts from an anthropological point of view.
So tell me what you know about it.
You know what I love about it? Do you see the iridescence of that bowl? The iridescence was actually done by grinding pearls and putting pearls into the glaze itself.
All right. They didn't grind up pearls and make glazes out of them. I know a lot of you are laughing, but there are people out in the world today that believe that they made glazes out of crushed up pearls for Chinese porcelains and so forth. So there's problem number one.
This bowl was used to hold water and rose petals for the royal court.
I find it really interesting. I find it really cool, but
Should point out that they didn't display rose petals in the palace in China. Peonies, lotus blossoms, not rose petals.
was it real?
So to really know whether this is a Qianlong bowl or not is to look on the back. As you look at ancient Chinese configurations, you're going to get 6 figures. 1, 2.
Obviously, it's not a configuration. It is a seal script. And he's going to point out correctly that it's not a Qianlong mark, but it's actually a Chai Ching mark. but he mispronounces it. But that's neither here nor there at this point. It's all coal to Newcastle, all coals to Newcastle at this point. It's a mess.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when I look at this, what I'm seeing here, this means Jia, and this says Qing, Jia Qing dynasty. Unfortunately, this is not Qianlong. This is another dynasty. And the Jia Qing dynasty was after Qianlong.
There was no Qia Qing dynasty. It was the Chai Qing period. Dynasties are for example, the Qing dynasty, and most of you know this. The Qing dynasty was a long era of time that included within it many emperors in succession: Qianlong Emperor, Chai Qing Emperor, Daoguan Emperor, and so forth. All right, it's not a dynasty; it's a period, and he's calling it a dynasty, which right away sort of splits open his argument that he's an expert on Chinese art.
This was the dynasty of his son.
So it's Jia Qin, not Qing Lung.
We are Jia Qin
Jia
Bo.
Qin.
Okay, Jia Qin.
So I absolutely do believe it is authentic to that dynasty.
All right, so what do you think it's worth?
Okay, so I'm going to say a good, solid wholesale price on it would be $3,000.
$3,000. All right. So now hundreds of thousands of people have seen this, and they believe that bowl, which they can come back to, they have good photographs of it, are going to see these out in the world and think they're worth $3,000. And you have to believe that a lot of people were able to sell a lot of these copies that are all over the internet, eBay, Etsy, and you name it, Invaluable, live auctioneers, and got serious money for them in many cases because he just set the price at $3,000 wholesale, which to people means the retail price is probably $6,000, which is of course completely untrue. Completely untrue.
Okay. Well, thanks, man.
Yes, sir.
I
Absolutely.
really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
I am absolutely amazed that there is a bowl like that floating around. How did that bowl get to Las Vegas? My hope is that someday it may end up in a museum.
Okay.
A final offer would be $4,500.
Wait for the end and hear what the fellow has to say once they agreed to buy it from him.
I should pay $3,000 for it. I'll pay $3,500 because I find it a really fascinating piece and I think it'll sell.
Well, I have been offered more for it. Would you consider 4?
I'll tell you what, I'll go 38 and I'm probably crazy for doing it.
Okay, I'll take the 38.
Okay, cool. I really appreciate it.
He sold it. I thought he sold it for $3,000. He sold it for $3,800 to this guy. That's breathtaking. And what he has to say once they agree to buy it, his comment at the end is hilarious.
Leave that right there. Follow me and we'll go do some paperwork.
3,800 is pretty close to the 4,000 that I was really asking. I am smiling because I can buy another piece.
And there you go. And he's off to buy another one. Okay. And so apparently he knows they're fairly common. And he may know that it was a fake. I don't know. I'm not going to go into that. But the bottom line is that now you have a video out there that's showing a very, very common type of reproduction with an enormous price on it for what it is and is going to get people into hot water. That's as simple as that. All right, and this is a lady that has a YouTube channel, and she uses the username Dr. Lori. She's got a couple of 100,000 subscribers, and she talks about all kinds of collectibles and jewelry and paintings and you name it. But she doesn't know much about Chinese stuff. And in her hand is a modern, brand new Langyao type vase. And I'm not saying she does this intentionally. I don't think she does anything to be mean. I think she's perfectly sincere in what she thinks. but she's a little bombastic, I suppose. But you have to go through this and watch how she describes this. And again, this video has had probably 100,000, 150,000 views. Lots of people watch it. A lot of people hang on what she says because she has a considerable amount of credibility in certain areas of ceramics. I'm not saying she's without knowledge. She is with knowledge, but she strayed. When she gets into Chinese and Asian stuff, she strays way out of her pasture. And it'll become obvious in just a couple of seconds. And pay close attention to the words she uses, the dates she uses, and it all just sort of falls apart.
Oh, really? With this mark? Yeah. Wow. Wow, $10. How old do you think it is? It is hand glazed. Flambe is an actual element that we...
Keep in mind, it's not a flambe glaze. It's a Langyao or copper red glaze. And the mark on the bottom is a Kangxi mark, which of course dates to the second part of the 17th century and the first 20 or so years of the 18th century.
You see of this nice red color, this lovely red glaze comes up. It's of course a bulbous bottom. It pinches heat.
I'm pointing these out because these vases turn up all the time. Many of you know that. You've seen them. They're all over Live Auctioneers. They're all over eBay. And lots and lots and lots of these copies are being made today. And the vase in her hand is a copy.
How old do you think it is? Oh, 40s or 50s? How about Quinn Long, 19th century? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Oh, really?
All right. Did you catch that? Qin Lung, 19th century. And it's not. It's Kangxi marked, but it was made probably around 5 or 10 years ago, 15 years ago maybe. But the Qianlong period wasn't in the 19th century. It was in the 18th century. It ended, as you know, in the 1790s. Again, you know, she's not doing it to mislead, but she has misinformation. And that's pretty serious misinformation.
It's a 6-character mark, 6 different characters, 4 characters, 6 characters. Oh my gosh, we're getting chills. Oh my gosh, it's not even yours and you have chills. I know, this is a very good show, you know.
And that was it. So in the end, she deemed it to be a market period Qianlong vase made during the 19th century that's a flambe glaze and is worth $1,500. And those of you that have been around for a while know perfectly well that that was a Kangxi mark on the bottle of a Langyao bottle that indicates it was made in the first part of the 18th century, not the 19th century, and it wasn't a Qianlong mark, but the whole thing is a fake to begin with and was probably worth $10 more than she paid for it. Maybe it was worth 20, but it certainly isn't worth 1,500. But tens of thousands of people see this. They like this Dr. Laurie lady. And again, more bad information going into the internet. And that's just another classic case. And these aren't just a couple of pieces on here. If you go through the internet, you'll find lots and lots and lots of them. And I'm going to show you a few more that are pretty horrific. Okay, and this is a channel that's on YouTube. It's under the name of Philip Lee. And sort of like the gentleman with masterpieces, he's gone a different route. He doesn't gotten as many subscribers. He hasn't produced a video up on the internet now for a while. But in this video, he's talking about a very famous type of these Jing fish jars from the Ming Dynasty. Extremely rare, extremely valuable. Fantastically rare, and he talks about how rare and unusual they are, and how they were made during the pinnacle of Chinese porcelain making in China and all this business. And then as the video proceeds, I'm not going to go through all of what he has to say. He just finishes telling everybody how rare they are, and then he does this.
It's a lot smaller, and this one's very genuine and it's very nice. The glaze is very thick, and look at the seal mark too. It's just...
Now keep in mind, he just said it's genuine. All right, and he's got one here, but he's not done yet. He's got more.
Unreal. Look at this. And the rim is finished very nicely, and with the glaze and with the flower. The red is not as red though. The green is beautiful and all this. This one is an excellent piece as well. And I have also the other piece I have is a medium-sized piece, which this one similar piece sold in New York Christie a couple years ago. This was a size. This size is a medium piece.
All right. He just implied that just sold at Christie's a few years ago, or one exactly like it. And if you look at these jars, they're clearly copies. They're clearly fakes. But here he is. He's pushing, again, this misinformation that, you can find them out there. And if you go to live auctioneers and look around, check out Eden Galleries down in Roswell, Georgia, these places, a couple of auction houses in Florida. There's a few in the New York area, out in California. There's a number of auction houses. You will find these jars on there with considerable regularity, despite the fact that they're worth, 8, 10, 15 million, $20 million a piece, depending on the size. He's got 3 of them. And this is illustrative of the point of the internet and misinformation. I know you're all sort of getting the idea at this point, but I just wanted to point it out. And in his list of videos that he's done them for Falun vases, rare snuff bottles, famille rose bottles. Here he has a group of ancient bronzes, and he does them both in Chinese and in English. This is the part that's really crazy. He does them in all the languages. Here's one that got 1,400 views, though. Secrets of Chinese Bronzes over 3,000 years old. None of these bronzes are old, not one of them. They're all brand new. All brand new. As are these bronzes. There's a copy of a chicken cup, the famous one, the famously sold a few years ago for $35 million. Went to a private museum in China. Moon flasks, and on and on and on. So I'm just pointing these out to make the point that again, big problems with the internet. Now I want to get into the next category that is really strange, is the topic of AI. And I hope you find it interesting. It's pretty fascinating, actually. And now we come to the topic of AI. And I was curious to see if you went to an AI. I tried it on about, I think, 6 different AI platforms, including ChatGPT, the big one. I asked it to create for me a Ming jade. And supposedly, according to the information that I gathered on how images are created, the computers scour the internet for examples of jade that are listed as Ming. For example, in this case, it would be Ming jades, and it will gather up all of the available images on it, and it will create sort of an amalgam or a version or variety of jade that would closely resemble what a Ming jade would be. All right. It doesn't go out and find one that was for sale or in a museum and reproduces it. It goes through the internet and looks at all of the images of things that are listed with tags on the internet as being Ming jades, and this is what it came up with. And I know some of you are sitting at home laughing right now, but that's what ChatGPT told me is a Ming jade, and it obviously isn't. It's a nonsensical jade. It's not unattractive. It's sort of interestingly done. It's got fascinating patterns in it, but it is very close, much closer to what the internet would produce if these AI programs go out searching the internet looking for things. There are so many fakes and copies on the internet. It actually changes what AI, or it actually influences what AI is going to produce as a result. I then asked it, and I asked it to produce a dog, or a foo dog, I think is what I said. All right. And this is what it produced. That's the foo dog that it made. And this is a dog that I asked it to produce. Show me a Ming Dynasty jade dog. And I was asking for jades specifically, Ming Dynasty jades. And this they came back with as a Ming Dynasty jade, which of course it isn't. So I said, well, that didn't work out very well, so I'm going to try bronzes. So show me a gilt-splashed Ming bronze, which are very easy to find on live auctioneers, or to find if you go to a Christie's website and do their image searches. You'll find these. You'll find them all the time. This is what it produced. And that doesn't bear this, other than the most basic shape, meaning it had feet, and handles and was round. It bears no resemblance whatsoever to a Ming bronze. But again, so many fakes on the market, so many fakes on the internet. AI found a bunch of them and said, this is what a Ming bronze would look like, right? And here's another supposed Ming bronze. Obviously not. It actually looks closer to Japanese, but same description produced two images. I asked it to make me a couple images, and this was the other image that it made. Again, it's supposed to be a Ming bronze. All right. And then I said a portrait of the Emperor Qianlong. All right. Pretty straightforward proposition. I'm going to skip over the fact that the costumes they've got them in aren't even close to the 18th century. But the facial features, I thought it would be able to find a few portraits of the emperor that it could create a composite. And that's the picture that it came up with. This is supposed to be the Qianlong emperor. But if you go over to the Qianlong emperor, that's what he looked like. All right. That's his portrait. That's one of the most famous portraits of him, and it's a detail of his headshot. And that's him here. And other than having, Chinese facial features, they bear no resemblance whatsoever. And I looked and looked and looked, and I looked at some earlier examples of portraits of the emperor when he was younger, and the difference is even worse. So obviously incorrect. Then I asked it to make me a Qianlong Famille Rose vase, which should be a slam dunk. Qianlong period porcelain vase with Famille Rose enamels, and that's what it came up with. It's kind of pretty. It's extremely modern looking, but if you go on the internet and scour around, you're going to find porcelains that are being produced today that don't look too dissimilar from this. So that's what AI created in their mind as being an authentic Qianlong vase. Then I asked it for some Shang bronzes. It gets even more ridiculous. I said, show me a Shang bronze, any kind of bronze. I didn't say I want to see heads or anything else. And I've done this before in a number of cases. Every time I ask for a Shang bronze, it shows me a Buddha head. And they look nothing like any Buddha that was ever produced during any dynasty that I'm aware of. And it made this one, and the second one it made was this. And according to AI, that's a Shang bronze. And of course, it's just a ludicrous situation, and it gets other things wrong as well. It gets other things wrong on AI. I want you to know I did some checking on history. I asked it some questions about the sacking of the Summer Palace. I asked it some questions about trade in Canton, and it always got something very, very wrong. And I think this is the problem. It's in many cases it barely had any information at all, and these were major historical events for China, and it provided very little information. So if you're thinking of using AI to authenticate things, forget it. It's not going to do it for you. It's a fun exercise. It's amusing to see what it comes up with, but obviously there's zero accuracy in AI when it comes to art. And I'm going to bet that you would encounter the same thing if you typed in wanted to show me a Monet or show me a Picasso. God knows what it would come in with a Picasso. But the point is that AI is now spreading misinformation because people will, I guarantee you, be going over to the AI section and typing in they buy a piece of bronze and they want to know is it authentic or not. And it's going to show you such modern looking pieces that people that have bought modern bronzes from China are going to think this is authentic. It's real. And I don't know where it's all going to end. But if you do searches and looking for information on Google, you're going to get in the image results, you're going to get 95 out of 100 images are going to be inaccurate as to age. If you go on to YouTube and look around a bit, you're going to find people that are just misinformed. As I pointed out with Dr. Laurie, I think she's I got to get a kick out of her channel. If you want to subscribe to her, go ahead. She's actually very funny at times, and she seems very nice. But she didn't turn off and say I don't know. And that's a fair thing to say. I realize that she doesn't like to say that, but you have to sometimes say, gee, I don't really know. I do it all the time. If I have something that comes into me to look at and I haven't seen it before, if they want an immediate answer, I'm going to say, I don't know. I got to do some homework on this one, because there's such ranges, and there's still, after even 40 years, I still see things all the time that I hadn't seen before. It happens all the time. It's fairly common. But in some of these shows, these internet channels, they just can't say they don't know. I don't, and that's too bad. They should do it. And then you have, of course, the people who are just creating fakes and fraudulent videos, like Mr. Lee. And then you have adding to the problem AI with its misinformation. Loading up on the internet, and it's going to have an impact. People are going to be using them as authentication tools, and you cannot use AI to authenticate artwork, period. All right, nor find similar or comparable examples. All right. The other thing that some of the AI programs have, and I will warn people about this, is that you can pull up images, and it'll look for. There's a way to have it search the internet for comparables. So if you think you have a sung piece and you put it on there, it's going to go around finding them for you and then creating a pastiche of that on their AI program, and you're going to think, oh, there it is. It's just like the one I have. And again, it's going to be stylized modern nonsense. This is sort of an interesting looking bronze. If somebody could make this, it'd be sort of fun. But it's not authentic, and it's not tied to anything. She looks more like an astronaut, Chinese astronaut lady from outer space, than anything else. But at any rate, that's what we've got. All right. I hope you found this interesting. You got to be very, very careful out there when you're looking around, checking things out, making sure that you cross your T's and dot your I's, especially when it comes to objects from sources that you're not absolutely positively certain about. And I hope this helps, and I hope you found it sort of amusing. All right. Have a good day, and we'll be back tomorrow with a regular video. Bye-bye.